John, and welcome to another edition of Cozy, Charming, Crazy Real Estate, where we talk about everything real estate. Today we're going to talk about tips for selling distressed properties. Now, we're going to start out by talking about the difference between a distressed sale and selling a distressed property, because they're really two different things. Now, a distressed sale is one that is caused by the situation that the seller finds themselves in. It is not distressed because of the property, it's a distress sale because the seller is under distress. Now, what kind of distress? Well, the common ones are the seller needs cash fast. They need to unload a property, convert it into cash for whatever reason. So that means they need a quick sale, and a cash sale is the best way to close something quickly. There's no appraisal necessarily required. There's no mortgage approval, and it's just a buyer coming in with cash, so they can usually get the job done pretty quick, and that solves that needs cash fast problem. It could be that the seller is the executor or of an estate or trustee of a trust, and that trust or estate needs to liquidate the property quick to pay its bills. It could also be that the property has been hit with encumbrances or liens that the seller can't pay, and therefore, again, the seller has to convert that real estate into cash as quickly as they can. A lien might be a judgment against the owner. Maybe they got sued for some reason that has nothing to do with the property, but all of a sudden the owner finds themselves needing to pay a large bill quickly, and selling real estate is his best option. Another situation could be a short sale is considered a distressed sale. Now, a short sale is simply when the value of the property is less than the current loan balance. So a short sale, which we're going to talk about probably in another video, does need to be approved by the bank, but it is a distressed sale because it does require bank approval. There's also pre-foreclosure. If a homeowner or a property owner of any type has found themselves behind on their mortgage, and they're starting to get warning letters from the mortgage company saying, hey, you're getting behind, that's considered in pre-foreclosure. Now, the property could also now be in foreclosure. In foreclosure means that the bank has given all the warnings and now they're going to foreclose on the property. There's usually a firm deadline date for either catching up on payments, working out a deal with the bank, or satisfying the mortgage by selling the property for a price that's enough to pay off the mortgage. There is, there is also situations where there is bank owned or real estate owned. You'll see REO as a term that's quite often used, and that means that the bank has already foreclosed. They've now taken ownership of a property that was in foreclosure. Now they own it, and the bank wants to get that sale done quickly because they are not in the business of holding on to real estate. It's an asset that they want to liquidate into cash. So a bank-owned or REO sale is also considered as distressed sale. And finally, the last one is a tax sale. Sometimes property owner maybe doesn't have enough money to pay the taxes on the property. In most states, the homeowner has 5 years to catch up. If they've come to the end of the line, they've been able to not been able to meet that tax deadline, then there's different names for it depending upon where you are. In some areas, they call it a sheriff's sale, a tax sale. Basically, the property is being sold to pay taxes. Now, a distressed sale, a distressed property sale, is different because everything that defines a distressed property sale has to do with the property itself being in distress. So let's talk about the four main things that cause distress in a property, and then we're going to talk about the tips of making that type of a sale. Well, first, a distressed property is one that is simply in bad condition. It may be unsafe to enter, it could be structurally unsound. It could also be partially built or remodeled. And there are certain issues that you can have with a property. Maybe there are open walls, there are open beams or open supports on the floor. Maybe it doesn't have all the roof. It's just not a finished building. And however, the owner does not have the resources, the cash usually, to put into fixing that property so that it is whole. And so therefore the property is in a distressed situation. Could be that the cost of repair, rehabilitation, or rebuilding is just not financially viable. Therefore, the owner wants to sell it and get what cash they can out of it. It could be, and this does happen from time to time, that the zoning has changed for that area and the structure that is on that property does not meet the new revised zoning that is applicable to that property. When that's the case, sometimes an owner just says, well, geez, I don't want to, and as is normal, that a residential becomes commercial. Very seldom does commercial become residential, because if that happens, it's easy to tear down commercial buildings. They go in there with the bulldozers, boom. But if they convert a neighborhood to a commercial property, normally the value of commercial property is higher. Commercial buyers will come in. It's easy for them to tear down a few houses and turn that into a commercial property if the zoning has changed. So the last situation that defines a distressed property might be that the zoning no longer applies to the structure as it sits today. So what are our tips for selling a distressed property? Well, if you have a property and you know that it's not going to be sold at market value because it is distressed, it does have problems with it, it is not a whole finished property, first thing you ought to do is get an appraisal. And a good appraisal will tell you the value of that property in its present condition. It might even, if you request the appraiser to do so, provide a potential value for that property if the money was put in to finish whatever needs to be done to make it whole, or to get it rehabbed to be equal or better than other properties in that neighborhood. You might also want to get bids to bring that property up to neighborhood standards. Even if you just get an appraisal for it in its present condition, you might also want to get bids for what it would cost to bring it up to neighborhood standards. And that way you'll at least know when you're pricing that property for sale what it could be worth, how much a buyer might have to put into it to make it a usable property. You also might want to consider the zoning issues. And by that, we mean if you have a large residential property, let's say one with a lot of land, you might want to consider asking for a zoning change if there are no other property owners against it in that area, and consider getting a zoning change to commercial because commercial property typically has greater value than residential. So that's something you might want to look into. Good tip. Another tip is hire an agent. Now, when you have a property that is in distress, it attracts buyers who buy what they call off-market properties that are not listed for sale. They do not want to deal with agents because agents are going to negotiate higher prices. But if you are a seller, you do want to get the highest price. So I would say if you do get a lot of phone calls, emails, contacts from people that say, well, I want to buy it before it goes on the market, you might want to just wait and say no. Hire an agent who can help you get an appraisal, get the estimates, and figure out what a good market value is for that home, and then help you with any little tricks that might be available to help you get a better price for a property that, again, is in distressed condition. The other thing you want to do now that you have an agent, your agent should also advise you on this, how to do it, but you do want to market it as widely as you can. You don't want to have your agent say, well, I'm going to sell it off market. No, you want your agent to put it on the open market. You want to advertise it as widely as certainly any other property. Put it in the MLS, disclose all the conditions that make it a distressed property, but you want to, like any other property, advertise it as widely as you can. Now, you also might want to consider a couple different kinds of offers that you may get. And those two kinds, the main two kinds, are a straight offer. In other words, someone just goes ahead and buys it in its current condition, whether they use cash financing, you don't care, as long as you get your money on escrow closing day. But you might want to consider either a straight sale or a rehab partnership. Now, in a rehab partnership, again, I would work with an agent with experience in these kinds of deals. Rehab partnership, you allow a contractor or an investor to come in and bring that property up to neighborhood standards, make it a whole property. You retain ownership of the land, of the property, until such time as that finished property is sold. Now, that investor has to make some money off the deal too. We can't get too greedy, but a rehab partnership is sometimes a good option to help get more out of a property than selling it at that distressed value. So again, our tips: get an appraisal, get estimates for rehab to bring it up to neighborhood standards and to make it whole. Consider the zoning and whether or not requesting a zoning change makes sense. Hire an agent, definitely hire an agent. And advertise the property as widely as you can, get as many potential buyers to look at it as possible. And then consider either a regular sale or a rehab partnership and see which one you're most comfortable with, which one will get you the most money. So those are our tips for selling a distressed property. I hope you found this interesting. If you did, please hit like. We hope that you will also subscribe, and we'll be coming out again next week with another cozy, charming, crazy real estate. See you then.